Mike Seferdini, International Space Station Program Manager. Mike, another crew embarks on a 5-month mission to the International Space Station. Your thoughts on what Roman Romanenko, Tom Marshburn, and Chris Hadfield will bring to the station in terms of their expertise and experience for their 5-month visit?
Yes, well, of course, Roman's been there before and had an increment previous to this. Both Chris and Tom have been to orbit before, so they are an experienced crew. And with that comes the ability to acclimate relatively quickly to their environment once they get to orbit, and then get right on with the research that's at hand. And so, you know, from my perspective, that's one of the best things about an experienced crew is they can get right to work relatively quickly and get on with the research that we look forward to.
In your pre-flight discussions with the crew, how do they characterize their flight and their level of preparedness to tackle the challenge?
Well, like many of the crews before them, they are very relaxed. They had no questions relative to the job at hand. They've been trained very well, and they're ready to get up there. We have kind of transitioned our crew training to not do too much specific research training, but rather train the crews on how to do the different types of research so they can be prepared for anything that comes up. So this crew, again, because of their experience, is ready to go. I have no doubt in their ability to handle any of the jobs that we give them while they're there.
Well, during their 5 months, everything is going to be heading their way, vehicle-wise. Another Soyuz, of course, coming up in March. 2 Russian Progress vehicles, the European automated transfer vehicle, and not only the next SpaceX commercial vehicle, but likely the debut of the orbital Cygnus vehicle to further enhance commercial cargo carrying capability. How busy is the next half year going to be for this crew and the space station in general?
Well, in general, we have now gotten ourselves on a pace where we keep the research at a level that we've committed to and consistently been able to do that. And so the 35 hours a week average that we try to maintain for the crew it turns out to be challenging for a crew, especially when they have a lot of vehicle traffic that shows up. And the berthing vehicles in particular require a lot of preparation prior to their arrival and additional training for the crew to get comfortable with the robotic system that they're going to use to capture the vehicles. So both the SpaceX and the Orbital will be vehicles of this nature, and so it'll add to the challenge of getting the research time done on orbit as well. And whenever we bring a new vehicle, it adds a certain amount of excitement to the program. We're looking very forward to the Cygnus arrival on ISS and the dimension it adds to our ability to provide logistics for ISS, and of course that will complete our logistics vehicles that we intend to utilize throughout the life of the program to maintain the ISS. So this is the Cygnus arriving is a special treat for us.
So on Friday, this trio of crew members, they slide down the chimney, as it were, bearing Christmas gifts of themselves and other things for the 3 crew members that have been tending to operations for the past 5 weeks or so on the station. How, in your eyes, as the program manager, to recap 2012, a lot of people call it a milestone year. How would you characterize it? What was the most important thing for Space Station this year?
Well, there's of course a lot of things you can point to, but the arrival of the SpaceX vehicle for us was a major milestone. It signified to us our ability to continue to operate station in the way we had expected. We put a lot of contingency plans in place. We really loaded up the last couple of shuttle flights to ISS to protect us for delays in those vehicles. So when the spacecraft, when the Dragon capsule arrived safely and successfully to the ISS, that was a major milestone. Of course, I can't say that without talking about the EVAs that we performed in order to recover the power systems on board ISS and the crew's phenomenal work to support that. So it's been a big year for us, and in the middle of all of that going on, we were able to continue to get all the research work that we needed to do.
Bill Gerstenmaier, NASA's Associate Administrator for Human Exploration Operations. Bill, another crew embarks to the International Space Station, a holiday season gift to the crew on board the station already. What are you looking for as this complex 5-month increment gets underway?
I mean, pretty exciting launch today, and Kevin's just done a great job on orbit, taking care of space station and keeping things working. And we reviewed recently in the flight readiness review the number of hours we've been accomplishing for science, and just with Kevin there, he was able to get the hours we anticipated and actually some extra ones. So Kevin's been just doing a fantastic job on orbit. It'll be so great to get Tom and Chris and Roman up there to increase the crew size to 6. They'll be very busy once they get on orbit. There's a lot of activity planned. It'll be kind of nice in a way. They'll start off with the Christmas holidays and some breaks that'll allow them to get used to space station, to get in the groove of being in a new home, getting acclimated, get a lot of the routine things out of the way, learning how to operate station and get ready to go really do some science. Then there's a nice little break at the first part of the expedition where they'll have a lot of time to do a lot of research and a lot of science prior to the Progress 50 launch. So I'm looking very forward to them getting up with some of the science, bringing some new activities online, continuing some of the experiments we've done, and continuing to move forward with research on board station. So I think it's going to be a very productive increment. It'll get pretty busy after this first period with potentially a fair amount of vehicle traffic back and forth, but just really the focus is on research, and they're really ready to go start doing some pretty classy research for this first part of their expedition.
A year ago, we were here and we talked about 2012 being a milestone year potentially and a transition type of year. How has it been in retrospect, and what does this portend for 2013?
Yeah, I think, last year at this time I talked about it being a transition year from when we were going from the assembly phase of station to the utilization phase, and we've really stepped into the utilization phase. We've got a tremendous amount of research going on board station. I think there's 66 investigators from around the world have activities working on station right now. If you look at the amount of hours and the amount of investigations going on, it's just phenomenal what occurred last year. We also, were able to deal with a couple, interesting times during the year. So there's a little bit of slips in some of the launches and some of the flights move around a little bit. But again, the teams were really well prepared. They were able to handle those minor shifts in vehicle traffic that moved around. We had to do the contingency EVA for the main bus switching unit, and the crew and ground teams just did a phenomenal job with that. There was trouble getting the bolt to go in, and they were able to go get that next EVA the next day and get the bolt in with a little bit of preparation. And really, again, that just shows how well the teams, both the ground teams and the flight teams, were working together. And then just prior to the end of this year, when we had to go out, just prior to Sunny and Aki coming home, they had to go out and do the spacewalk with the radiator on the photovoltaic system, and they were able to do that and get it done before we ended up in this next period. So I would say that the teams have done a tremendous job of keeping space station really ready and functional and ready to go do research. They've been able to deal with problems that have come along in a manner that's just exemplary. They just keep moving forward. They keep doing things that keep going forward. So as I look forward to next year, I think about just the research that's going to be done. It takes a long time. Sometimes the research is done, and then the scientists spend some time looking at the data, and then you'll see the results. So I think it's time to be a little bit patient, let the researchers look at the unique data they got, look at the things they're learning, and there'll be some good results coming out in the future. Again, we see a couple things that are pretty unique on station. We get to see the station start to prepare us for exploration flights, to go beyond low Earth orbit. We're learning how the human body changes in space and what we need to do for long-duration missions. We're learning how our life support system operates, how our oxygen generation system works, our CO2 removal system works. We're preparing those systems for long-duration space flight. So we're really learning from this space station to move us beyond low Earth orbit. And in addition to that, that we get a chance to really benefit folks down here on the Earth. And as the crew patch says, off the Earth, for the Earth. And that's a pretty neat little saying on the bottom of the patch. And what that's saying is that the research we're doing on station and the sacrifices that the crews mean by going to space or take by going to space, they get a chance to see real benefits to us down here on the ground. And one thing that's pretty unique is we're starting to use ultrasound now to look at the crew's spines on orbit. We've not done that before. You know, the spine typically elongates when you go to zero gravity. It grows maybe an inch or so. And then the idea is with the ultrasound, you can actually see how the spine is expanding and how it's moving. You know, we did that because we didn't have an X-ray machine on board Space Station. You know, it turns out that the medical community on the ground said, hey, maybe there's something to this. Maybe we should not use our X-ray stuff. We ought to maybe try using ultrasound here on the ground to see what we can learn about monitoring spines and injuries in the spines. So now we're starting to see ultrasound start to get used here terrestrially on the Earth. So here's the thing that we had to do in space a unique way. It made us think a different way. It made us be innovative and use a tool in a different manner. Then that same tool got translated and got used now in the ground. So the ground is now learning from what we're doing in space. So just as the patch says, you know, off the Earth for the benefit of the Earth or for the Earth, you're seeing that transition occur. So I look forward to that next year. I hope our crews will continue to have a great time on orbit. They're making sacrifices for us, and hopefully we'll get to see those benefits to every one of us down here on the Earth. So I'm looking very forward to this next year, and I really look forward to see the crew arriving at station and seeing all 6 crew members on orbit. So this will be a great time on Space Station.